Dawn of Ragnarok will mark the biggest moment in Valhalla's life cycle yet. I already went over the fact that it will be the biggest DLC for an Assassin's Creed ever, with 35 hours of content. Svartalfheim will be 1/3 of the size of England. And now I learned some extra details in an interview with some of the developers at Ubisoft Sofia who are working on the game. And truth be told, I'm more excited for this new content now. For one, they really designed Dawn of Ragnarok as endgame content. Which is exciting for someone like me who put around the 400 hours into the game already. Like, all the other expansions could be accessed very early on and would just scale to your current level. And also that it takes place after the main mythical story arc means that we have a more experienced Eivor and Odin. So that should hopefully give the story some extra depth. And don't worry, by the way, if you haven't finished Valhalla yet or are actually just getting started, then you will still be able to play this content. Dawn of Ragnarok will be available very early for all players, regardless of where they are progression-wise. And this likely via a boost you will be able to access via the menu. We already had some leaks about this from Andy Reloads, and of course a link to all the people I mentioned in this video will be in the video description. He shared this message, which notes that the player has chosen to start the Assassin's Creed experience directly from Expansion 3 title. You will start your journey from Svartalfheim at power level 340. So, again, expect this content to be around that power level too, which I hope means it's more challenging as well. And Ubisoft will share more info about this boost later on, although what we already know is that veteran players will be rewarded. French YouTuber Jonathan shared info about mythical hordes, where we need to progress in the main game, then talk to people in Ravensthorpe to hear stories of treasures Svartalfheim holds. And in my interview, it was also noted that our most loyal players can look forward to some specific rewards that will recognize their commitment and love for the game. And we would really like to leave it to the community to discover them and share. We don't know what these rewards will be, but at least having finished the main story and likely the other arcs should give us something when Dawn of Ragnarok hits. And of course, in the expansion itself, we will also get a ton of new things, including a boar mount. Ubisoft did not want to share how we could obtain it, so maybe it's not as simple as the Druid's Cat and the Paris Bear that were just unlocked after like the first mission. But they did confirm that this will be the only new mount in the expansion. While we will be able to get 4 of these Norse pole arms called Edgeir. We saw Odin use a really cool looking one in the trailer and in the assets already, so we should expect 3 other variants in this DLC. And in my interview it was noted that it does only come with its own unique set of animations, just like the other new weapon types we've seen, but that the Edgeir will feature a unique combo system that rewards precise play. Combining light and heavy attacks will result in specific attacks that have distinct effects. Right now you can, for example, do 2 light attacks and then a heavy attack to trigger a combo finisher. So I'm curious if there will be like multiple combinations for this new weapon type. It at least sounds pretty cool and something fresh compared to the other weapons we have. I asked about mysteries in the DLC, the new powers that I learned some interesting details about, just like the arena. So let's go over them. Of course, if you like the video so far, then leaving a like on it would really help me out. Subscribe for everything Assassin's Creed if you haven't already, and totally check out my giveaway for 2,300 Helix credits, which you can enter via the link in the pinned comment. There were no mysteries with dialogue in the Druids DLC, and we had them in very limited capacity in Francia. Well, Ubisoft now says that we will also discover many of the personal stories of the dwarves and mysteries beyond their imagination. So I take that as a yes, that we also see mysteries in Dawn of Ragnarok. In the mythical worlds, in the main game, there were no rewards or unlocks at all, which was kind of a letdown, but it also made sense because these were just visions that Eivor experienced. They were not real. Well, I learned that all the gear and weapons we collect in Svartalfheim can also be used in real-world locations, and all the resources and collectibles we earn will also carry over to the main game, although they did not give an explanation for why it's different this time. But important is that the powers linked to the Hugr Rip Bracer we get as a gift from the dwarves will only be available in Svartalfheim. So things like turning into a raven or reviving dead enemies can only be used in that realm, not even in Asgard or Jotunheim. But next to these powers, there will also be regular abilities, and the new abilities that will come with Dawn of Ragnarok will be usable in all worlds, both real and myth, but when used in the mythical worlds, there will be a small surprise waiting for players. Okay, I think that's a very cool twist, but the Hugr Rip is of course more important. Like, these powers are more impactful and they're really made to change things up, something that Valhalla desperately needs and what the previous DLCs sadly did not really offer. So there should be a new gameplay loop here. The idea is namely that you get new powers by defeating enemies, but you can only store 2 of them at the same time. So if you want to use a new one, but you already have 2 equipped, then you have to swap 1 out. So if this is done correctly, then we'll be constantly switching powers and look for enemies with other powers to overcome the different encounters, which also sounds pretty awesome. We will also need Hugr to use these powers. All living things carry it, and Odin can reveal it by defeating enemies and animals and draining it from Hugr blooms. I think we already saw them briefly in this screenshot. But in times of dire need, players can even sacrifice some of their own life for Hugr at the shrines of Yggdrasil. So adrenaline still seems to be a thing, but on top of that we have these unique powers now that should be more limited in how often we can use them, and we only have access to 2 of them at the same time. So that should on paper make builds in Svartalfheim more interesting. And I was happy when the lead gameplay programmer talked about builds when referring to the brand new arena. We wanted to introduce a game mode that encouraged players to experiment more with the full breadth of the combat system that Valhalla has to offer. We wanted players to try different builds, Hugr Rip powers, weapons and armors, abilities and different tactics during the fight. And we sadly still don't have any footage of the arena yet, but I did learn some new details. We namely unlocked the arena very early on in the DLC, and then as we travel through Svartalfheim, more content for the arena will be unlocked. There will be a wide variety of challenges in which players will face opponents from Dawn of Ragnarok, but also from Valhalla. So yes, expect to see older mythical bosses, and personally I just hope to see like more bosses from the main game in general. Just bring them all back, I don't mind it. I would actually love to fight some of them again. And the twist of course is this time around that we can make these challenges more difficult by adding bows. Like one leaked by Andy Reload is called Arrow Magnet, where players take 50% more range damage, and we also do not have any arrows. And you can combine this with other debuffs to make the fight of course more challenging. But if you then succeed, the more bows you used, the better your rewards. Players will earn mighty weapons, armor and runes by fighting in the arena. Those will surely be very valuable on their quest, but style is just as important, and players can fight for some cool cosmetic items too. And according to the game files, also as noted by Andy, this is where we can get the Odin Allfather armor. I touched on this briefly in my previous video, as it's very similar to the Twilight set you can get right now if you pre-order the Dawn of Ragnarok DLC. Totally check that video out if you haven't already by clicking on the screen, because yeah, it lets you summon a blizzard. It's pretty wild. So subscribe of course for everything Valhalla. When we have more Dawn of Ragnarok info, I'll be the first to tell you here. A like on the video would really help me out, and if you watch this before or during Christmas, I hope you have a good one. Merry Christmas, and I will speak to you soon. Goodbye.